Yes, I had money. What's the point?
Sometimes, like,
Obviously. Chair has to pitch me a deal. You get enough stress. You think I didn't ask for it. That's great. Even if I got it, you think. State has no clout. They gave us the right to set up an ATM here where they take 70% of the money out.
Well, good evening, authority members, good evening, authority staff, and good evening to the public. I'm going to call to order the February 13th, 2025 Northern Virginia Transportation Authority meeting. We are sorry that we're starting a little late. The finance meeting ran right up to the line, and so we all just took a little break before we came in here. So we have people still coming in. I'm going to hold off on the roll call because I do know there are people who are getting here as fast as they can through traffic. And so what we're going to do right now is go, instead of doing the roll call, we're going to go straight to the two presentations we have, because they may take a little while and it's really important for us to see those. The first one is the Smart Scale funding recommendations. The second one is the economic impact of MBTA, which is going to be a real interesting discussion. I would ask before the Smart Scale discussion happens, for everyone who might be new or may not really kind of understand how Smart Scale should work, let's make sure before we get into the presentation and who's getting money and who's not and all those things, I think it's important to just lay down what Smart Scale was supposed to be and how it's supposed to work. So let's do that. Let's do that as well. So who is doing that? Is that who's doing Smart Scale?
We have
Mr. Jackson?
Ms. Jackson
Ms. Jackson.
from the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment. That last I always.
Ms. Jackson, how are you?
Program.
Can you hear us?
I'm good, thank you very much. Yes, can you hear me?
Is she on mute?
Ms. Jackson, we're going to unmute you.
I shouldn't. I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
I can hear her online. This is Chair Jefferson. I can hear
I
her.
had a brief conversation with
her.
John Lawson this morning. He mentioned that he was going to start off their program and then turn it over to.
Is Mr. Lawson on?
Mr. Lawson's photos up there.
Mr. Lawson, can you hear us?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you for having us this evening.
We can't hear you, Mr. Lawson.
Okay, I am not muted.
I can hear you, John. Yeah, I can
you.
hear you, John. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Brooke.
I can hear
Okay,
you.
we can hear you.
Yeah.
They'll hear both of you as well. So I'm not sure which one of you wants to start off. Welcome to MBTA. I'm not sure which one of you wants to start off. I did ask that there might be a little just very quick introduction of what Smart Scale is, what it's supposed to be, and how that money is supposed to be allocated. And then we can go into the presentation if you don't mind. So we are ready when you are.
All right, Madam Chair, I'll start off with just a few comments, and I'm glad you asked for a little background because we kind of started the presentation with some background information as well. Not everyone touches it every day like we do, so I understand the need to try to help people understand the program. So what we did want to do today, and again, thank you for having us. We always appreciate the opportunity to talk with our partners in the world of transportation of how we handle Smart Scale, which, as you all know, is the process the Commonwealth Transportation Board uses to distribute the funds that are distributed by formula to the Highway District Grant Program and the Highway High Priorities Program. So they are statutory formulas to say how much of our available funds go into those areas. Smart Scale is the means by which the board is advised on which projects should be funded. And the selections are coming from you, from the applicants, the localities, and the transportation entities such as yourself that submit applications. What we're going to do this evening, Ms. Jackson in her presentation will have a few slides that kind of talk about Smart Scale, how it started, what its intent was, how it works, and we'll do that before we get into a little discussion around the results of round 6, the number of applications the amount of funding available, the funding available per area, and then how projects were scored and kind of the results in terms of that was presented last month at the Commonwealth Transportation Board. That's what we call the staff recommended funded scenario. And just a point of note there, that is the scenario that the staff recommends to the board just purely based on math. And between now and May, the board will have discussion, we'll have public meetings, and there may well be changes before to this, what we call the consensus scenario, before it's adopted by the board in June. And we do have, to kind of conclude the presentation, a few comments, few observations, I'll say, about what we see related to Northern Virginia and kind of how it relates perhaps to the bigger statewide pool of projects that have been submitted. So, Madam Chair, unless you have some other questions at this point, I'll turn it over to Ms. Jackson.
No, we're ready.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, John. Is the presentation that we provided, is that able to be brought up? I don't see it on my end yet.
Please see the presentation.
Okay. I'm gonna have to go off of the room video, I think, as it's not coming through, but that's okay. So I think if you can go to slide 3, and I'll just use the numbers of the slide as I talk through just to figure out where I am on everything. But as John laid out the agenda, I'm not going to go through that. I'm start with history and purpose, and I'm just going to hit on a couple of top things. That the Smart Scale process was created to remove that political element in project selection and fund projects that bring the best value to the Commonwealth. It's important to remember that the Smart Scale process is an objective decision-making tool. It reflects the law and board policy. So as John was stating about the staff recommended scenario, it's a direct reflection of the board policy from the mathematical perspective. And to that end, the staff scenario that's presented in January will be transparently modified and reflecting like the subjective changes that the board members might want to consider or make. And I will come back to the board in May with any of those changes that the board members might want to make to those selections. You can go to the next slide. And I do see the slides now, so thank you very much for sharing that. There are 5 main parts of the Virginia Code that dictate the process to prioritize projects, and that's all laid out here, and I'll talk a little bit more about these things in detail throughout the presentation. But I do want to highlight it does establish a required benefit cost relationship. The size of the project or the size of the problem, it doesn't matter in the math. The value per dollar is what is evaluated. So benefit cost, it's on the requested dollar. That's another important piece. It encourages applicants to bring money to the table for projects that they are requesting. So benefit cost, but the cost part is requested amount of money. Next slide. These prioritized projects that we get to, they get funded through funding programs. And this pie chart illustrates how the funding for construction programs is defined. Specifically, DGP, the Construction District Grant Program, and HPP, the High Priority Projects Program. Those are the 2 programs that make up what we know as Smart Scale. But DGP, if you can go to the next slide. This has supplemental funding included with it as well. So this includes the regional fuels tax and all the areas of the Commonwealth where it's not already imposed. And so what you're looking at right now is a map of Virginia, and all of the gray areas are areas where the regional tax has supplements DGP in the state. And not every district is fully getting it. Northern Virginia does not get that money because the money is already allocated elsewhere, and it does not go into DGP. Next slide. So in 2023, the Secretary's office led a comprehensive review of the Smart Scale process that had been in place for about 10 years. We're running at 10 years. It was started in 2016 was the first round of Smart Scale. These process review changes had policy that was implemented for this round's staff recommended funding scenario. And all of that is laid out here. This is also presented to the board in January. I'm just going to focus on the policy improvements. Namely, we clarified the high priority projects program definition to ensure projects actually are of statewide or regional significance. We made tweaks to the land use and made it a multiplier. We also made tweaks to congestion scoring, looking 7 years in the future. And then VEDP partnered with us, OEP, to overhaul the economic development methodology. So the ED1 methodology has evolved significantly and is way more forward-looking for the Commonwealth. Next slide. So in addition to those adjustments that are outlined on the previous slide, we also made adjustments to the typology weighting. Mostly that had to do with the reallocation of the land use factor going to a multiplier. And so Nova District is 100% type A. And so that area is highlighted up there. And the majority of the focus you can see is 45% is on congestion, but there was additional emphasis this round put on safety and accessibility. You can see both of those factor areas went up in weighting by 10% in each of those two categories. And so those changes are reflected in round 6 as well. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So how do you get to your Smart Scale score? The way that we relay the Smart Scale score for individual projects is through a scorecard. This is an example scorecard. I had to break it up into 2 pieces for you. This is the top scoring project in the Nova District. It was the Duke Street and Route 1 improvements that is shown here. I'm going to walk through just one of these columns to kind of show you how it's calculated and how we get to a Smart Scale score. These are just for reference. All of them are currently available on our website, and I'll list them all in the resources for you. And then additionally, we do publicly make our applications. We do make our applications publicly available. Those are in the process of being converted to public visibility. And the scorecards will also be on the Smart Portal website. But walking through this, we gave basic information on the left side, the project description that's given by the applicant, also letting you know what funding programs that it's eligible for. And in this case, this project was eligible for DGP only, not eligible for HPP. But then on the right side is the actual scoring information. So it tells you right off the bat at the top of the scoring information what typology it is, and we covered those in the previous slide. So those are all of your weighting categories that will be applied. And then it covers the factors, and factors have measures. Measures make up a factor area. And the measure value is a direct result of our calculations or modeling. It's mode neutral, so transit or car or freight, all of that is equated to people or persons and make it a mode neutral calculation. And these measures together make up the factor area once we go through my example here that we've laid out in the scorecard. So in this particular case, I'm going to go through the increase in peak period person throughput. The measure value here was assigned a 304.1 additional persons. So it's important to keep in mind when we're talking about measures, it's the change in before and after if the project was built. So what is the project doing to change current conditions? Very important to the overall process. So in this case, 304.1 persons were able to be moved through this corridor or through this area that weren't before. So that value is then compared to the highest value within the Smart Scale cohort of this round, and we call that normalization. So the highest value was 5,575, and this value is 304.1, and so that makes up 5.45% of the biggest value. And so that's how we get our normalized value of 5.5. Additionally, we have measure weights that make up the factors. Those are flat across the state. So these values are used everywhere. And that's just to come up with the blend of magnitude or rate. And you can see that in safety, that we have a blend of different measures and how much they get weighted within that factor area. That 5.5 was then weighted, and there was a 0 in the delay reduction on this. So the value was 2.7. And then after you have the factor values, you apply those factor weightings. And again, congestion is 45% in area type A. So that gets you to a weighted factor value of 1.2. These weighted factor values that are along that row there, all of them get added up to become your project benefit, all of them except the land use factor at the end. Additionally, that environmental column, there is typically a negative score there, but in this case, it didn't get a negative impact to the environment assigned to it. So you might have a subtraction of benefit as well. But the 1.2 plus 0.2 plus 1.5 plus 0 plus 4 are all added together. And then they are multiplied by this 1.8 value, because the land use score was a 79.6 normalized, which is a very good score. That's one of the worst as compared to the top land use score. So that makes the multiplier technically be 1.796. And so that's how you get your project benefit score of 12.4, is multiplying that 1.8 times all of those other benefits that wrote. Okay, so on top of that, you get that 12.4 benefit, and then you divide by the cost. And this, again, the smart scale cost is the requested amount. That is what smart scale cost means. So if this project actually costs $10 million, but the applicant is bringing to the table $3.5 million, your smart scale cost is $6.5 million. And that's how we have that value there. And the benefit is divided by these requested dollars per $10 million. And that is just so it's more digestible as a number. The smart scale score is more digestible. So just in layman's terms, if you applied for a project and that project has a 50 benefit score and you ask for 10 million, the smart scale score is 50. If you ask for 20 million, the smart scale score is 25. So that's why we do that. Next slide. Then once we have our smart scale score that was established in the last slide, it was 18.9. We take those smart scale scores and they're put into two different funding steps. And those funding steps have different qualifications on eligibility. Simply put, DGP funds are competed for within the district, and HPP funds are competed for statewide. And DGP eligibility pertains only to localities addressing any VFRANS needs. And then HPP applies to regional entities, transit entities, and localities, but you do have to meet HPP requirements with those refined policy definitions and those higher level VTrans needs, either on a corridor of statewide significance or regional network. And the way the process works in step one, you sort by district. So if we were sorting just to Northern Virginia projects, you sort the smart scale by the smart scale score highest to lowest. If eligible for DGP, you go down the line and fully fund projects. That's a key element of smart scale, is to fully fund projects until you cannot fund the next project, and then you stop allocating dollars or allocating projects. And then any remaining HPP eligible projects, they sit in waiting to get sorted with the entire state to do a statewide sort in the exact same matter. And it is only smart scale score that is used for sorting for these steps. Next slide. All right, so this is showing a summary of the applicant. Yes.
Just so we could take a quick pause there, Madam Chair. I don't know if you or anyone else have any questions before we actually start talking about the round 6 information.
Well, first of all, I cannot tell you how less smart I feel after learning how smart scale money works. Does anyone have any questions so far? I have, if you go, can you go back to slide 8 for just for a second? Is there ever a time where when you're considering smart scale money, you take into account the AMI of the locality that is requesting the smart scale money?
For
Or
me,
the
I'm gonna
region.
need you to define AMI.
Define AMI, area medium income.
No, that is not one of the factors.
So then no, yeah.
Okay, that is not one of the criteria.
But yeah, what I will add is in accessibility, we have the increase to access to jobs for disadvantaged populations.
I'm sorry,
That
can you say
is
that one more time for me?
the
I missed that. Can you say that one more time, please?
Yeah, of course. The A2 measure is increase in access to jobs for disadvantaged populations.
Ah, interesting. Okay, that's helpful to know that. Thank you. Chair Jefferson, did you have a question?
I just had a quick question. Will you be able to share this? This isn't in our agenda packets.
Got it by email.
Chair Jefferson, we received it, I guess roughly 5 something, so we did email it out to
Yeah,
everyone.
came up.
Yeah, thank you. I was in the car. Thank you. Driving home. Thank you.
Okay, is that it? All right, thank you. I think we're ready to keep going.
Okay. Go back to slide 11. Wonderful. This is showing the request by district across the state, just to give you a feel of what different districts are applying for and what the request and total cost is. The average smart scale request statewide for dividing by all the projects, the 270 is 30.3 million for the average request, and the total cost is 34.5 million. Specifically within the Northern Virginia district, you can see the overall request was 1.33 billion with a total cost of 1.8 billion. And the difference between those two numbers represents the leverage that was brought by the applicants to the table. But overall, I think it's important to note as well that the average request from the Nova district was 57.8 million, and the average total request was 81.1 million. So when comparing it to the state, 30.3 million versus 57.8 million in the Northern Virginia area. Next slide. This is the funding available in round 6. There was a total of 1.1 billion is available for round 6. Additional background information of where these dollars came from for the fiscal year 2026 to 2031 is available in these links that I have here in the presentation. And just also noting that the budget is in flux until we're through May when we come back with the consensus scenario, but it's typically very similar between January and May. That all of the DGP amounts that we were talking about, including the regional gas tax on the supplemental tax, is included in these DGP numbers, along with the regular formula that's required. And then the HPP that was available was 384 million. Next slide. So this is playing out all of the steps that I went through in those slides. It shows the available amount of funding for each district, and that DGP money stays within that district, and that's the max amount of money that could be allocated. So for the Northern Virginia area, there were 23 applications, and there was $97.4 million available for DGP allocations. And we were able to run down the list and fund up to 88.7 million. So it was stopped. We couldn't fund the next project. So there is still remaining dollars. There's $8.8 million available. That money could be allocated to another project. That could be held in reserve. It could be eaten up by maintenance money. That money is in flex right now, but there is remaining DGP available at this point of 8.8 million. And then after we allocate all of the DGP, then that HPP is allocated by sorting the remaining projects that are eligible for HPP and sorting down the line based on their smart scale score. And we were able to allocate 381 million using that process, leaving 3.6 million unallocated. Next slide. This slide represents the summary of money that was allocated by actual principal improvement type. I always remind folks when I show this slide that projects are multimodal within Smart Scale. When you see highway primary, there's a 50% chance that that highway project has bike and ped on it, a 30% chance that that highway project has transit on it. But we determine what is the principal improvement type by what is the primary cost of the project, and that's how that assignment happens. And one of the things that has happened from the program review to now that we will highlight it is the success rate of funding is now nearly identical to the makeup of the request for funding. So example is we had 7.2 billion requested of highway projects, making up 88% of the request. And then 855.2 million was allocated, and that made up 87% of the funded dollars. So it's very in line with requests and what we're actually allocating along in the process. Next slide. Any questions? No questions? Okay. This is a reference slide that we give with round over round. It's showing how many applications we had, our full applications, our pre-applications, how many projects we scored. This round, we scored 270 projects and we were able to fund 53. We had 8.2 billion in requests, and we're always going to have more requests than we have available to distribute. And through that process that I went through on slide 13, I showed how we actually distributed that $1 billion, and we still have some remaining money left over as well from that. But one of the things is, why are there less projects? You know, last round we had 164, and this round we have 53. It's twofold. The average request per project has gone up, and then the funding available has gone down. And there's more information about that, like I said, in that linked presentation if you want to take a look at that. You have time. Next slide.
I mean, that's why I asked that question.
This slide is showing the summary of funding requests round over round. This is just giving a little bit more detail from the slides previously on actual funding pots, because I know folks are interested in the difference between HPP and DGP. So you can see the steady increase in the requests in HPP. We did have that blip in fiscal year 2022, but it has steadily increased the request. So this round, the average request for HPP dollars was 55.2 million, and the average DGP request was 17.4. And how does that compare to Northern Virginia versus the statewide? In Northern Virginia, 15 out of 23 projects were HPP eligible. And so that statewide number is 55.2, and the Northern Virginia number is 84.5 million is the average HPP request, which is 1.5 times the average statewide HPP. Then for DGP, Northern Virginia had 22 out of 23 are DGP eligible, and that number is 17.4 statewide and 58.9 million for the Northern Virginia district. So that's almost 3.5 times the average statewide request. But keeping that in mind, when the funding requests are 2 to 3 times more, the benefit has to be 2 to 3 times more to make the benefit cost competitive. So those are directly related, and it's directly benefit cost as we go throughout this process. Fine. This is the staff recommended scenario for Northern Virginia. All of the 23 projects are listed here. It does also say what fund the project was eligible for. If it says both, it's eligible for both HPP and DGP. For example, the sixth one down, the Route 294 project, that was eligible to get resorted into the HPP sort process since it was not funded in step one. But the top 4 projects here were funded, and that total request amount is there as well. Next slide. All right, so as Dawn was mentioning, we were going to go through a little bit of background and then a little bit of the results. And now I'm going to cover a couple of observations we had when we were digging into the Northern Virginia data versus statewide data. And that's broken up into 2 things. You know, we're going to talk a little bit about benefit and cost, which brings in that smart scale score. And then we'll talk a little bit about where to focus in on your benefits and what projects to maybe focus more time on. So DGP, like we mentioned, are competed for within the district, HPP statewide. There is particular interest in HPP, so we want to put a little more focus on that. Of the funded HPP projects statewide, the highest smart scale score was 17.7 and the lowest was 3.96. The average funded project benefit was 17.9 and the average smart scale score was 6.9. And that's more for reference as we're talking through the Northern Virginia comparison. The average funded request amount was 27.2 million and the average value supported was 30.4. The HPP requests in the Nova district were amounted to a project benefit of 13 and an average smart scale score of 2.7. And this had an average request of 84.5 million with an average value supported of 116.9 million. So there's a big jump between that 27.2 and that 84.5. But these smart scale scores are still close and in line. And I think the example on the previous slide showed a score of 3.54. And that was just shy of what the lowest smart scale score of 3.96 was funded in HPP. So those are very close and very close in competition for funding, but did not make the cut this round due to the amount of funding that was available. Next slide. I do want to tie in VTrans to the piece of this picture. In the Office of Intermodal Planning Investment, we have VTrans pipeline, that is studies to actually hone in and focus in on those VTrans needs, and Smart Scale is the investment piece and prioritizing the needs for funding. And then our performance management group looks at how the data is acting as a result of these projects, and then it feeds that information back into VTrans, and VTrans uses the crash data and congestion data as well. So we're all using that same data. So how can you hone in on the areas that have the greatest needs? And just simply put, the location with greatest needs are identified in VTrans. They're using the same crash data that we use. They're using the same congestion data as we do, and they're using reliability data, bike and ped in transit information. So we're all using the same stuff, and all of this is available for your use and reference. So on top of that, honing in on VTrans priority needs are categorized into 2 different categories: statewide priorities or construction district priorities. And statewide priorities focus on corridors of statewide significance, and construction district priority locations focus on all other roads. I think this is important to note, and we found that 65% in round 6, 65% of the statewide HPP eligible projects were located on a statewide priority need location. 70% of the statewide HPP projects that were funded were located on a statewide priority need location. Of Nova's HPP eligible projects, only 5 out of 15, or 33%, were located on a statewide priority need location. So there is a direct correlation to those needs and to where the projects have benefit. And there is nuance in it, but finding projects that address the greatest needs identified V-Trans is a very good tie. So next slide.
Boston here in Prince William County, some other projects.
So this is all publicly available. This map is a quick screenshot of some of the statewide priorities, and they are ranked from priority 1 being the worst to priority 4, still having issues, but not being the worst of the priorities. And all of this is available on V-Trans, Interact V-Trans. And we also have this information integrated into the SMART portal when an applicant is making an application. Using this data helps locate where the greatest needs are and where money and dollars should be put towards project development.
And
Next
Brooke, if I
slide.
could jump in there really quick, you know, Madam Chair, members, you know, what this is getting at is where the greatest needs have been identified is likely to where a project or a solution that is located will get the greatest project benefit. And again, the data that's behind the identification of these needs you see on the map is the same data that drives all the math that Brooke walked through in that scorecard. So
Except for that data can't, that need can't be just, if congestion relief is 45% of how you get to who gets, what localities or what project gets funded. And knowing the congestion issues in Northern Virginia, there's just a gap in these numbers that just are not really making sense to me. And I don't even know that I'm disagreeing with how the money is being where the money is being dispersed, or disagreeing with the actual projects the money is being placed on. That's not my disagreement, not at all. But I can't make this make sense when you say that 45% is congestion relief, knowing the congestion issues in Northern Virginia versus Richmond versus Hampton Roads, and then looking at the actual money that's been dispersed in Richmond and Hampton Roads. There's a gap here that I'm not getting. And again, I'm not saying that Richmond and Hampton Roads doesn't need the money, they do, but you got to make this make sense to me, and this does not make sense to me right now. And yes, I am.
I'm sorry. Madam Chair, do you remember that the 45%, that is a project by project calculation. So we look at a project and they determine what's the congestion relief that project brings. We determine the benefit there, and then the factor that's applied against that is the 45%. That relates to typology A, and I'm sure Brooke can explain that better, but it's a project by project look, and then how you value
congestion relief relative to cost, which we kind of know that statement. That's what you're saying. You're saying it's congestion relief relative to cost, project by project.
It's the amount of congestion relief that project provides. And then when we determining the project benefit, congestion relief is 45% of the value, which is greater than it is in other areas. Yes.
Hold on one second. We have one more question.
Yeah,
Mr. McKay.
I want to ask the question a little bit different, because I think we realize the scoring by project. I guess help a Northern Virginian watching this explain on the chart where you have staff recommended funding scenario in millions, how Northern Virginia can be trailing by a pretty wide margin Hampton Roads and Richmond in the total amount of DGP allocated and HPP allocated.
And Madam Chair, Mr. McCabe, I believe,
Yes.
I'll attempt to answer that. The DGP number is a formula computation that's set out in the code that's based on lane miles, population, land area, and I forget, there's another component and laid out in that computation. So that is a formula number. The reason you see some of the big differences is that supplemental DGP that Ms. Jackson mentioned earlier. The supplemental DGP is that additional gas tax that is imposed statewide. That again, that is not already addressed within a region. So Hampton Roads is Northern Virginia is the only district where all of the additional gas tax money that's generated is directed elsewhere. I believe all of your money ends up going to PRTC, NVTC, kind of intended to support VRE. If you look at Richmond, I forget what slide that was, Brooke, but if you look at that map, you'll see that there are areas of the Richmond district that are not within CVTA. So that that additional fuel tax that's collected in the areas outside of CVTA is provided to transportation and is added to Richmond district DGP funding pool.
Okay, so
Yes.
that explains the DGP part. Help us understand the HPP, because there must be a logical reason, but we're zeroed out and Richmond's at 255. So, that is the other thing that jumps out at us trying to rectify that.
Yeah, now high priority is a statewide pool. So there's one big pool of money, $380 some million that's available statewide, and it is distributed based on project score, the smart scale score. So as Brooke explained the steps, they fund all the projects with district by district based on how much money they have in their DGP pool. And then we take all of the high priority eligible projects that have not been funded and fund them in order, descending order of value. So when we went through, she talked about the scores, the smart scale scores, and that your highest scoring project that wasn't funded was 3.5 roughly. The lowest scoring project was 3.9. So you were literally 3 projects below where the money ran out. So it's not math that says how much money goes to a district. It's all based on the benefit your project's bringing in relationship to the dollar being asked.
Yeah. That's the same thing as congestion.
So-
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
So
We have a few more questions, if you don't mind. We have a few more questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair Randall. Is this working?
It is working. You want to introduce yourself so they know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, this is DJ. They're familiar with me.
Okay.
But first of all, I want to thank Deputy Secretary Lawson and Ms. Jackson for taking a Thursday evening to explain what I think everyone can agree is a relatively complicated system by which the Commonwealth of Virginia allocates these funds. I think it's from a pure policy context, it's a great system to depoliticize and make sure funds go to the right place. But I think Chairman Kaye's point is dead on, which is Northern Virginia has severely underperformed most of the Commonwealth when it comes to this system. And so
Actually, that was my point, but when that.
Could be a little bit blunter. When they presented this during our CPTV board meeting last month, that was my main concern. Like, how is it that Northern Virginia is coming in 5th out of the Commonwealth from pure dollars? And I think if I could just paraphrase what I've learned at this point, it is we are not doing as well advancing projects that score well under this system. So other parts of the Commonwealth are advancing better scoring projects, not to say better projects, but better scoring projects.
Okay.
than we are. And so I think for me, the moral of the story is there's probably a fair amount we could do at MVTA to help the communities in this region work together to advance projects that score well, so we get a more rational allocation of the funds available.
That makes sense. So to learn with projects and then to learn how to do, yeah, okay. Okay, I'll take that. Mayor Gaskins.
Thank you, Chair Randall. Thank you, Chair Randall, and thank you for the presentation. I guess I kind of want to build on where DJ was taking us. Hearing the comments earlier that said, you know, the higher the cost, the more you have to prove double the benefit is what I heard. And recognizing we're in an area that has higher costs, I'm just wondering, even as we present additional projects, sort of, is there an opportunity within the formula, or is there something that needs to change within the math that really takes into account what a benefit looks like here that may look different in other parts of the state?
That is, yeah. Did you all hear that question?
Oh, sorry.
I did.
Okay. Because we thought it was a brilliant question.
Yes.
I can go ahead and take the first
Sure.
flag at it and have John add in extra as needed. So there's multiple parts to that, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. With using VTrans as your first stop to find the places that have the most need, that data, that crash data, that congestion data is telling you where the most need is, and need and solutions to those issue areas are the places where you're going to get higher benefit. The correlation that is being made here is that other localities and applicants are choosing locations where they will produce a better benefit. And there is a map and layers that will show you where those problem areas are and where to focus on. That's the point I'm making with the VTrans needs. They're all connected, and that ties to the benefit piece. So that's the first piece, is benefit. And it's not a one-to-one. That's where I was making the point that it's about 70% of the statewide priority needs are getting funded on HPP. There's other considerations that aren't taken into VTrans, namely economic development. So some of those projects get funded in the mix, and land use isn't considered in VTrans. There's certain pieces in Smart Scale that we add a little bit more that might not, but there is a very strong correlation to providing solutions in areas of great need, give you that top benefit score that is stronger. And Northern Virginia and Richmond and Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia isn't having the highest benefit scores. And I think that is because they're not choosing the right locations. The second piece is cost. It's not just straightforward that Northern Virginia has the most expensive projects just because of right-of-way. There are other components that make projects expensive. Are we right-sizing projects? Do you need to widen the road, or do we need to do access management on a road? You know, is the project selection the right choice for that particular area? Do we need 2 shared use paths on the side of a road, or do we only need 1 shared use path to cut costs? So it's about also getting lean about what your selection of your project is. The second thing you could do is, so it's either making your project right-sized and leaner, or adding more money to the project if you do want to have that unlean project. And there is tons of hours that could be spent talking through that and what that means. But there are 2 ways to reduce costs. You can reduce the cost to be very specific to the location that has the most need, or you can add more money to your total request if you're outside the area of need. But folks in other areas of the state are very much honing in on very specific areas of need and right-sizing the projects to what that need is. I think that's a very important piece that folks are learning and catching on as they are applying for the Smart Scale process.
Thank you for all the answers. We're going to keep going on because we've taken a lot of time for good reason on this subject. And I think that we could have other questions. It seems like TJ, you're going to be answering maybe questions first too later on. Everybody get DJ's number before you leave. But there's not that many more slides to go. Did you want to just finish up?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So go ahead to the next slide. So this is just outlining what to expect for the rest of this round. Like I was mentioning before, we have not adopted these projects yet. We are in what is called the consensus. We are in the area of working on the consensus scenario with the board members to determine if the projects identified in the staff scenario should be the ones that ultimately get funded. So we're taking in that objective data now from different applicants saying, this should be funded for reasons that aren't captured in Smart Scale. And they're talking to their board members and maybe those projects get swapped out. But again, it's very transparent. We will be presenting if there are any changes to the staff scenario publicly at the board meeting. And that will be adopted again in June. It's the 6-year improvement program. All of these projects will become full projects in the June timeframe. All I have after that, that concludes my presentation. There are a couple more slides that just have some resources for y'all. And that again, take you to those project scorecards. So that's the next slide, if you don't mind. So if y'all have this presentation in your hands, you are able to get to all of these links. I give you all the scorecards, the project scoring calculations. We publicize very detailed sheets of all the scoring. And you're welcome to take a look at that, play with the data. The Excel data is out there. We love and encourage dialogue on scoring. Have particular questions about a project, we're available for your resource and reference if you have questions. My information is on the next slide. If you need to reach out to me, I am the program manager of the Smart Scale team, and our contact information is there. But I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Well, Ms. Jackson, first of all, thank you all for taking so much time and answering so many questions. Also, please thank the secretary. He has been so available and helpful. And when he came on, he was early in his term when he talked about the fact that there would probably be some changing or tweaking of how Smart Scale is done. And so we've kind of all expected this for a long time. But he's, you know, I think he's been one of our better transportation secretaries, to be quite honest. So please give him our thanks as well. We are going to go on because we are running, we've taken a long time on this item. However, everyone does have your contact information, and I suspect that there may be people who are reaching out to you, especially when we go back to our localities and have these discussions with our localities. I can tell you for sure, certain that we may be reaching out to you from Loudoun County just to make sure we know, get more clarity. But we do appreciate you taking so much time with us tonight.
Madam Chair.
Absolutely, thank you.
I want to thank you for having us again tonight, and I will certainly relay your comments to the secretary, and also want to extend that invitation for us to come talk to any of your members about the Smart Scale and what we are seeing, what the results are, and kind of how it works and how it could perhaps help you as you go forward.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. We're going to go back to doing the roll call. Ms. Henderson, do you mind doing that just to make sure we have a quorum in the room, and then we'll go on to the second presentation that we have this evening?
No. Chair Randall.
Here.
Vice Chair Snyder.
Here virtually due to medical conditions, specifically the flu.
Chairman McKay.
Here.
Chair Jefferson.
Here.
Board Member DeFerrante.
Here.
Mayor Gaskins.
Here.
Mayor David Younger.
Here.
Mayor Mensing. Mayor Reed.
Here.
Senator Boysko. Delegate Delaney. Delegate Sewell. Mr. Gribben.
Here.
Mayor Colbert.
Here.
Mr. Cutler.
Here.
Mr. Horsley.
Here.
Have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really, members, let's go on and go to the second presentation, which is our MBTA's capital investment, which we have, and you have that in front of you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the authority. Sri Nambudri, Senior Manager at NVTA. Whether small scale money comes or not, you keep investing NVTA's money in Northern Virginia. I would quickly go through this analysis and results that you have in front of you. Why we are doing this study, how do we do this study, what's the structure of this study, what kind of investments you have made so far, and what are the impacts of that. And then in future, there are some other areas that we would like to explore. So we'll talk about that. Purpose, we want to understand what the impact, the economic impact of all the investments you are making. We have been doing this study. This is the fourth time we are doing this study. So we have some benchmarks made already, but we want to continue and see how that is progressing over years. But usually we do this after the 6-year program update is adopted. So a bunch of new projects, new investment is made. We started this right after the first 6-year program in 2018. So we have that over time, we are doing this benchmark and we want to understand how this is changing over time. And we want to do this study through a well-recognized, transparent, and repeatable modeling techniques that are used across the board in other areas. This is done by an independent external firm. Next slide. So that firm is Chimura Economics and Analytics based out of Richmond, Virginia. They have done all the 4 studies so far we have done. They are a reputed firm working not only in Virginia, but across the country. And they usually use a tool called Implant Pro. That is what they used in the last 3 rounds. That's again widely used for this sort of studies everywhere. This time they used what they call Jobs EQ tool. That's the in-house tool that they developed. When we checked why it is, Implant Pro is getting costlier and costly. So they wanted to create a tool that is similar, but internal one. So we're using the same methodology. Everything is similar, but that's a slightly different tool they use this time. We are looking at all the investments, not just the regional revenue investments, 30%, but 30% funds too. Next slide, please. So what's the impact? When we say what impact, what are we looking at? Is the economic impact is divided into 3 sections: direct impact, indirect impact, and induced impact. Direct impact is when these monies are invested in the region. A contractor is given the contract to do a construction work. They go out, get the materials, equipments, they hire labor, and you pay them their payroll, their salaries. So these are all direct impact. Indirect impact is the secondary economic activity. That's rental equipment. So the contractor is hired, he goes out to another contractor to get rental equipment, or this is by buying the design software, other services, things like that. Induced impact is basically when you have all these employment generated, they are going out to your communities and spending on retail and other activities. That's the induced impact. So this is a combined economic impact we talk about. In addition, we also look at fiscal impact. This is specific tax revenues local governments and state government receives. Local tax is business, professional, and occupational license tax, or BPOL tax. State gets the income tax, both personal, individual, and corporate. Next slide. This is the total investment, 4.9 billion so far. 3.8 billion of that is regional revenue, including the last 6-year program that you adopted in last July. That number is 3.8 billion. This is looking at revenues through 2029. 1.1 billion is what we already distributed. That's a local distribution funds that got distributed to all of you. That is through end of fiscal year 2024. So that's a total of 4.9 billion is what you have invested. Slide. Looking at the impact, dollar amount. So here you can see 2 numbers. First, I will go with the for 6.8 billion. That's the impact you are having based on this 4.9 billion of investments in Northern Virginia. Statewide, that goes up to 7.5 billion. That's a cumulative, so a difference of about 0.7 billion. So your investment is not only making impact in Northern Virginia, it's also making impact in rest of Virginia. What is not captured here is impact outside Virginia. For example, when you hire a contractor or a consultant for a project, they may not be being in Metro Washington DC area. They may not be located in Virginia. They may be in DC or Maryland. So some of this impact is going out to that into those regions. Another example is you have invested several tens of thousands of dollars in bus purchases for our transit agencies. We don't have any bus manufacturing in Virginia. That's happening in Ohio or in other places. So these investments are impacting the rest of the country too, which those are not captured in this analysis. It's only looking at what impact is happening in Northern Virginia and in general in the entire state. Next slide. Same thing you can look at in terms of how many employment is generated. 37,000 employment in Northern Virginia and additional 6,000 in rest of Virginia. So a total of 43,000 jobs created. Next. Mentioned about the fiscal impact of the tax revenues. The BP oil tax, 7 million in Northern Virginia. Income tax, 119 million goes to Virginia, to the state. It's not accumulative, it's, you know, income tax goes to the state. So 119 goes to the state. Next slide. So we also looked at value of time impact. This again, you know, Madam Chair was mentioning earlier about condition reduction relative to cost. By law, we had to give priority to that factor when we look at funding of projects through Shiksha program. So far, you have allocated 3.8 billion through that regional revenue program, 139 projects. When we do that analysis to find CRRC, our consultant team look at the project and see how much congestion reduction is achieved by each project individually. And then we look at when the project is coming online, when the project is completed, implemented, and ready for public use. From that time until 2040, we add those congestion reduction, the number of hours that we are saving, and then do it for all the 139 projects. So that comes to a total of 500 million hours. That's the number of hours of travel time saved. People are not sitting in vehicle in traffic through that 2040 year. Some of the projects are already implemented, so we are already seeing that benefit. It will keep accumulating until 2040. Some of them will come online as the projects get completed. This is all coming through the consultant team, not to the Chimura who did the economic analysis, but our consultants who does all this analysis for Shiksha program. At this point, we took over that number and we looked at what's the value of time for those 500 million hours that are saved. We could look at different ways. Look at how others are doing this. DOTs across the nation, TPB does use some of the numbers to come up with various analysis. So we looked at all that. First place we looked at is census, and it gives you $32 per hour as a median wage for our region. It's not just Northern Virginia, it's the entire Metro Washington region, but $32 per hour. But several of these studies takes half of that to be on the conservative side, half of that, and then apply that. If, for example, TPP uses that half of the median wage time number to analyze the impact of toll lanes in our region. So we use that same methodology, took half of that $32, that's $16 per hour is the value of time, times 500 million hours, you get 8 billion value of time saved through 2040. So this is a different way to look at the impact, additional way to look at the impacts. Next. Combine all these together, so you can see 4.9 billion of investment you made so far. Together, this economic and value of time impact, you have 15.5 billion in total impact. So 5 billion investing, 15 billion in impact, that's a 300% return on your investments. Next slide. So we want to explore this, expand this a bit more in the next round. We have, with the kind of information we have and what others have been doing, you can also find out the safety benefits. The congestion is going down, safety is improving by doing these projects. There are ways how you can calculate that. Less injuries, less fatalities, less property damage. You can come up with a dollar amount for that. emission is getting reduced. And again, part of the emission reduction benefit is on health. You know, the emission it creates a lot of respiratory problems and hospital visits, things like that. There is a way to calculate that. We want to look at that. Vehicle operating cost, again, since you are not sitting in traffic or you are not going through congested roads all the time, there is a operating cost savings that also we want to look at. Another area Finance Committee has already directed us is to look at how these projects impact our core values, equity, safety, and sustainability. So these are some of the areas we would like to explore in the next round. We will come back to you with whatever analysis we do and results of that the next time. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take.
That was really helpful, very concise. Questions? Anyone at all? Questions? Mr. Snyder, Chair Jefferson, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
No
Thank you.
questions. Thank you. Very impressive numbers.
It really was very much and very concise. So very well done. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We're going to go to our action items now. The first action item, of course, is to approve the minutes from the January 9th meeting. I'm assuming everybody read over your minutes and checked to make sure they were good. I will make a motion to approve the minutes from January 9th. Is there a second? Seconded by Chair McKay. Discussion on that motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion is unanimous for everyone who is in the room. The adoption of policy 30. Whoa, here we are. Mr. Lungi.
Policy 30 is back.
30 is back.
Respecting the time that you've already put into tonight, I'll try to be succinct, but definitely want to answer any questions that any of you have. This started in July of 24 when staff was directed to develop a policy to address underestimates, overruns, and then transfers was actually added later. We came back to you in November and asked for clarification as to whether this was to be an enabling policy or a non-enabling policy. And the direction was to make it a non-enabling policy. In other words, the authority would not fund underestimates, overruns, and transfers. However, there was an option, a desire expressed for an option for a circuit breaker, if you will. We end up calling that circuit breaker a petition. We read this to the authority in January. Some members have almost been victimized because your committee membership, you've seen this several times. I will note that the policy that's in front of you has not gone under any changes since the reading in January. So the staff report is lengthy. It includes work that was done in 2015 and 2016 that was very informative. I doubt you want me to go through it all, but I will just point out, if you look at the actual policy, the policy purpose is to establish that project risks due to cost underestimates, overruns, will not be absorbed by the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, and upon adoption of the policy, will not allow transfer of regional revenue funds between projects. To make a very simple statement on the petition process, I'll just note as all of you have heard before, the very carefully chosen wording down at the bottom of the first page of the actual policy, item 3D. Project sponsors can submit a petition if it believes it can proficiently demonstrate factual circumstances supported in currently available and detailed records demonstrating project conditions that are unique, extraordinary in circumstance, and could not have been anticipated. The rest of the policy essentially goes through the petition process, most importantly, linking the petition process to the next update to the 6-year program. So it's a 2-year cycle. With that, I do want to recap. We also presented the policy to RJAC in January. There have been many meetings with RJAC, almost monthly. And we also presented it to the TAC. The TAC did have a quorum and voted to recommend authority adoption. The PCAC had 5 members present, but unfortunately 1 was remote. So they technically did not have a quorum. And I'll allow Mayor Colbert as chair to correct me on any of this. They did take a straw vote. 4 members did agree that it should be moved forward for authority adoption. 1 member who was newly seated on the committee and newly seated in his position at the city, said he didn't see any problems with it, but wanted to have some more consultation with the city staff. With that, I'd be pleased to respond to any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Longy. Any questions? Any questions? Not seeing or hearing any. Would anyone like to put forward a motion?
Excuse me, Chair McKay. I believe we need Chair Randall
To be able
present
to vote.
to vote.
Okay, so if there are no questions, why don't we go ahead and present item number 7? We'll go back for a vote in item number 6 when she comes back.
Thank you. Chairman McKay, for item number 7 is the approval of letter of endorsement from VRE and the Passenger Rail Authority on what is called, thank you, PROTECT program grant application. And PROTECT stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for a Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation Program. What VRE and the Passenger Rail Authority are looking to do, it's in your packet, but I'll just say briefly to be cognizant of time. They're seeking funding for a comprehensive study on potential risk to railroad infrastructure in VRE's operating territory that's posed by excessive heat, inland flooding, and other adverse weather events. And the study will guide both entities' efforts to develop specific resiliency projects for the rail network and position the organizations for future funding opportunities that will enable the design and implementation of the infrastructure to address those issues. Okay, so I will move on to item number 8.
Let me just make sure there are no questions on item number 7 first before we move on. Any questions on item number 7? Okay.
And I will go a little
Item
slowly.
number 8. Oh, don't go slowly. Don't go slowly.
For item number 8 is a letter of endorsement request actually from Prince William County for the RAISE grant, which is Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. Prince William is proposing to construct a grade separated flyover ramp from the northbound Route 123 to westbound Old Bridge Road. The intersection improvement will improve safety by eliminating a dangerous weaving movement and will also reduce overall delay and congestion at the intersection. And they note that the project will further key shared state and federal transportation goals, including increasing transportation resiliency. There is resiliency again, providing multimodal transportation options, improving travel time reliability for local and commuter bus routes, pedestrian and bike facilities. I will note that Route 123 at Old Bridge Road intersection is in MBTA's long-range transportation plan transaction.
Questions on that? Let me just clarify one thing. When I look at the letter, the 33.4 million that's been programmed comes from RSTP funding, state and local revenue sharing, and I guess local debt funding approved with the 2019 bond referendum. So there is not NDTA money on the project. What we're doing here is simply endorsing the project.
That is correct.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, let's move on to item number 9.
Item number 9 is a CMAQ approval request for, and I guess it's a transfer request for Loudoun County. What Loudoun County is seeking to do is they're requesting $637,325 from UPC 112296, which is the Metro Station Area Pedestrian Improvements, to go to UPC 68760, the Village of Luckett Safety Improvements in Loudon. The requested transfer would reallocate funds from a project that actually has a surplus, which is the Metro Station Area Pedestrian Improvements Project, and rectify a funding shortfall on the Village of Luckett Safety Improvements Project. Both of these transfers would reduce the county match requirement by being met with NBTD bonds already in the on the Luckett's project.
Okay, any questions? Okay.
I do see Chair Randall in
Item-
the kitchen.
I think we can probably begin item 10. I see Ms. Baynard on there if my eyes are right. If she's on there, maybe we go ahead and move on with item 10 and then we'll go back and vote on the other ones.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm here and I'll be very, very quick. Just want to update everyone on the last time we met. I mentioned that Senator Silverville had introduced Senate Bill 1007, which was looking to create a dedicated funding source for regional PED bike projects based on the outstanding need indicated from a VDOT study that was completed and published in December of 2024. It had a per parking space proposed tax. The senator, having gotten a lot of comments from many of us, and did decide to change his bill to a study. He wanted NVTA as the regional entity to bring all the stakeholders together, take a look at the report and data that VDOT created, and do one, address a process for prioritizing projects, and then have a group discussion about potential revenue sources. That bill passed the Senate with a strong bipartisan majority, was then put into the House Transportation Committee. It went to a House Transportation Subcommittee, which recommended on a 6-2 vote for it to be reported. The announced last meeting of House Transportation was today's Thursday, this morning, and the bill was not on the agenda. So as of now, because of the deadline that all committee work has to be completed by midnight Monday, or Monday night, Tuesday morning, unless Chair Delaney has an additional meeting, and I haven't heard that she's going to, that bill will not come out of the Transportation Committee. And that case, as of now, it does not look like it will advance through the end of the General Assembly. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Baynard? Thank you so much, Tracy. Ms. Baynard, we will see you with 9 days left, right?
9 days left. Only 9.
Thank you. From what I understand, Mr. McKay is going to now be the chair of NVTA since he's shot through. So change places, not a problem for me at all. So we need to go back and vote. Is that what we need to do? On all
Starting
of them?
with item 6.
Okay. Item 6. I will be happy to just make these motions. I move the authority adoption of policy 30, funding costs, underestimate, overruns, and transfers as presented in the action in the attached draft.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. McKay. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. Item number 7, I move the authority approval of the letter of endorsement for the Virginia Railway Express Virginia Passenger Rail Authority promoting significant operations and transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation protect program grant application for a comprehensive study on the potential for extreme weather-related risk to railroad infrastructure in VRE's operating territory. Somebody better second that. That's not good. Seconded by Mr. DeVerde. Thank you, sir. Discussion on that motion. Great. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. Number 8, I move authority approval of the letter of endorsement for Prince William County. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Jefferson, would you like
You
to-
know what? I could second it. I mean, you were just going like a freight train, so.
You can make the motion. I apologize.
I move authority approval of the letter of endorsement for Prince William County's better utilizing investments to leverage development application.
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Davis Younger. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. Number 9, I move the authority approval to recommend the Commonwealth Transportation Board the reallocation of $637,325 of congestion mitigation and air and quality improvement program CMAQ funds from UPC 112296 to UPC 68760 for Loudoun County.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Thank you very much. Discussion on that motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. And now we are at Monica, your report, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. My report is in the packet, but I did want to call out 2 things. Number 1, we have a new MBTA staff member, Starla. Where are you? I believe today is her 4th day? 2nd, 3rd. It's been a long week. But we are grateful and appreciative to have Starla on board. She will be working with our planning team. And I don't know if she's been informed of this yet, but she will be leading the transaction update, which starts late fall. So if you didn't know Starla, something else I want to bring your attention to, we will be holding our 10th annual Transportation Roundtable. It's been 10 years. Save the date. It will be held Wednesday, April the 9th. But this year, we will not have it here in our offices. This year, it will be Virginia Tech's Innovation Campus in Alexandria. We're doing it jointly with them because there will be a demonstration. That sounds crazy. There will be a demonstration component to this year's event. So we look forward to seeing you there. And lastly, I want to note that NVTA, and I have to say this, were awarded one of the best workplaces for commuters in Fairfax County.
Hey.
We are extremely proud. I had staff, I wish it were my idea to submit, but it was not. Staff wanted to submit because we actually have employees who bike to work. I am not one of them. I live kind of far, but we have people that bike to work, take metro, carpool, take the commuter bus. So we really do try to practice what we preach. When we speak on being multimodal and providing multimodal options, we practice what we preach. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Thank you very much and congratulations. Your planning coordinator and advisory committee report and your tech advisory committee report are both in the package. Okay, wonderful. I have just a couple of comments. I did make phone calls this week to people to serve on our subcommittees. And Mayor Gaskin will be joining us on Governance and Personnel Committee. And Mayor Colbert will be on the PPC committee. Now, I did call Mayor Missing, thank you. And I got the wrong number. I didn't have her number. I talked to a lovely woman for quite a while. She explained to me that she'd like to have her 34-year-old son get married. And she'd like to be a grandmother at some time. And he's dating a lovely woman who they've been dating for 9 years, and she's not sure why we won't ask her to marry him. So, okay. So,
We should go ahead and appoint her. She's qualified.
I talked to her like half an hour. So I do not know where she will fall. However, we do have openings on the finance committee today. And thank you, Mayor Davis Younger and Mayor Reed for sitting in, although Mayor Reed has been very clear that that is not her committee. She does not want to serve on that committee. So if I do not hear from people who like to serve on the finance committee by the end of this week, I'll probably call you and let you know that you're going to be serving on the finance committee. So let's not everybody jump in for one time. Mayor Snyder is the chair of that committee, and we have a good time. Mayor, Mr. Lonke is fascinated with his finance reports, and so we will need 2 more members in the finance committee. I also want to say that this week, I need to check with Ms. Backman, because this week, the Prince William County Board took a vote to counsel the Route 28 project, the bypass project, exactly. And in doing so, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, what it would mean is the full amount of money that has been expended to Prince William County will come back to MBTA. I'm not sure in how that happens. And so, Ms. Backman, could you just tell us how MBTA claws back money after a project has been canceled?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's really 2 steps. Number one, it is required that the locality reimburse us for anything we reimburse them for. So we have $95 million on the Route 28 bypass project. 7.5 has been reimbursed to Prince William County for their expenses. So we will collect $7.5 million. Now, right now, because their board action was last Tuesday, per conversations with their staff, they will send us waiting for the certified resolution, and then we will initiate on our end as staff the reimbursement. The other thing that takes place is then you, as the authority, we will bring an action item for you to really cancel the project out, and that would free up the monies to go back into the regional revenue fund.
I understand. And the time frame on that depends on when they get the letter to you.
Well, you can cancel the project knowing that the project has been canceled, but for procedural purposes, we would like to have that certified resolution.
So, Ms. Jefferson, did you have anything you want to say on this? Chair Jefferson, I'm sorry.
I will work with staff to make sure that you get that certified resolution as soon as possible. I'm not familiar exactly what that is, but I will speak with my staff and get it to you.
And what I would say is this: per Robert's Rules of Order, any public body would have 1 more meeting to bring back an item. I don't expect that's going to happen with Butcher. I'm not saying I can't talk to anybody or don't know anything about, but just in case, I would wait till they get past their next full business meeting. So if anyone on the affirmative side of that vote or anyone who missed a vote wanted to do something different, they could. And after that, I think you look for the letter, just because it would make sense doing any other way. Per Robert's Rules of Order, that just makes the most sense, I think.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to wait.
Okay.
To have
So our next meeting will be on Tuesday, and we will be approving, I believe, please help me out. We'll be approving our minutes. And I believe after we approve our minutes, and after that meeting, we're not able to reconsider it. And to be quite frank, there is not will on the board to reconsider the vote.
I'm not making the assumption that it was. That's not my. I'm just saying.
I understand you. I just want to also give additional clarity. I love transparency, so my apologies. I just want to, let everyone know where things stood.
Okay, did you want to say something on this item?
I do, because I love transparency too. And I'll just say we've been, this project has been percolating now for almost 13 years. It's a regional priority. Fairfax County has supported this every step of the way. And I want to be clear about that, because there's been some very poor miscommunication about that. We have supported every step of the way, not only making improvements to Route 28 in Fairfax County to tee this up, but also supporting at this body the funding for NVTA. And without our support, that funding wouldn't have gone to Prince William County for this project. And so it's extraordinarily disappointing, I think, for the region. It's disappointing for all the NVTA staff that put particular time and energy into this project that we're here. When a jurisdiction enters into a project agreement with NVTA, the expectation of this committee is that project's going to be completed. It's what we're in the business of doing. And I think this is going to be a long-term regional mistake. I'm not aware of what alternatives are out there, but I would just clarify one other thing with Ms. Backman, that if this project is canceled and the money is refunded, it comes back to NVTA. Should Prince William County come forward with an alternative project, which I would guess the only alternative project would be to widen Route 28, which would take a lot longer and cost a lot more money, that project would recompete as a brand new project against every other project in the region. In other words, if an alternative is selected that the county would decide potentially to just widen in place, that's not the same as the bypass project that was funded. And so we start over again. I just want to make sure that's correct.
That is correct, Chair McKay. The county applied for the bypass, so that's what was funded. Now, any project that we do fund has to be in transaction, but that's step one. Then you have to go and make the application, and the application was for the bypass. If the county decided that they wanted to do another alternative on Route 28, then they would have to submit that project to compete with the rest of the projects that were submitted at that time.
Right, and you know, where we stand, at least as one directly impacted county, and I know others are as well, is that, you know, the next step for this project is to go to a further level of design. If we want to talk about transparency, we need to have a more finalized design to present to the public and get their input on. What Fairfax County was asked to do was endorse a design for this project that is not far enough along, in our opinion, and would be way outside the norm of what we do at this stage of a project, to endorse a design that we can't very clearly look at and have the property owners who are affected by this understand what that design means. And I'm not one to want to go out to these property owners and tell them we approved a design a long time ago when we really didn't have the level of design that we would expect to have here to be able to endorse. And so our position on this has been made very clear. We continue to support the project. We supported it every step of the way. Disappointed in what is happening with this in Prince William County, but it is absolutely patently untrue. What I have read, that we have reached an impasse with Fairfax County. We have not reached an impasse. We've reached a point where Prince William needs to do the work to do more design on the project so that we can have another meeting with the public in full transparency with them, and then endorse a further design element of the project, which is what our process is in Fairfax County.
And I would like to say that real quickly. I mean, again, we can go in circles from our point of view, and we've met, and you've met with our transportation staff. For us to continue with the design work, we did need an endorsement as per staff because we needed to work with the Army Corps of Engineers. It started to become a circular argument, and we needed to move forward. I don't know why this project was stopped, but when I came into office, I made it a priority. After speaking with constituents who would be directly impacted, meaning their houses would be taken from them in order for us to continue with this project. And we have a lot more takings in Prince William County than there are in Fairfax, you know, in all honesty and all fairness. And I had a lady come to me who's elderly, who has her washer and dryer in the basement. And she really wanted to move it up to the main level because she's older and it's harder for her to get down here. There. And she looked at me and she was like, Chair Jefferson, what do? I don't know what to do. I don't know if you're going to take my home or not. And these real people stories have an impact, and they have an impact again, because in Prince William, we are giving up more homes to be taken. There is more of a direct impact. And I appreciate you reiterating your commitment, but we really did reach an impasse, and we can talk more offline because this is becoming a circular argument. We could not move forward with the design work. I have sent a letter, and I will make it available to everyone. We sent a letter last year in September outlining what we needed, and I actually reiterated it in a letter to you today, Chair McKay, and I sent it to my board as well as your board. So if you would like to talk offline, I mean, I understand your disappointment. I hate asking for additional patience because I know that that's such a critical regional route, and there is so much congestion. But we in Prince William County, we have to be mindful of our constituents. We also have to be mindful that this project has ballooned another $100 million. And, you know, we needed more of a good faith. I know past chair, I believe it was Bulova, voted on this at NBTA. But if you would like to continue to talk offline, I'm certainly willing to do that. I mean, my door is always open.
So I just want MBTA to get our money back. That's all.
You're gonna get your money back, and you can spend it too.
And just to close the circle, Miss Backman, and I do think this is important because I don't want anyone in Prince William County, because when I sit in this seat as chair of MBTA, and I do believe that I'm representing everybody in Northern Virginia as it pertains to transportation issues. And so I do want to be clear, to have clarity, and I do want the residents of Prince William County to know that returning this money doesn't mean it automatically goes into a different Prince William County project. I have read that over and over and over and over again, and I've seen people correct it. But I'm not saying I heard it. I'm saying my own eyes read it over and over again from Prince William County residents. Well, now we can just put this on another project. And so just again, for transparency's sake and to, just to manage expectations, it doesn't mean that. Ms. Backman, if all the things you said happened and it went back and they have another project later on and all those things happen, that would still have to come to the authority to be voted on as well, correct?
That is correct.
So even all those things happen, nothing guarantees that this money would any money, amount of money goes back to any locality.
That is correct.
Okay.
We would have to rescore it, or not rescore, just score it and do the whole evaluation process that we do for all projects when we're doing the 6-year program update. We would make a recommendation, take it to the committees. Your planning and programming committee would make the final recommendation to the authority. But to answer your question directly, if you cancel a project, you don't get the opportunity to unilaterally move that money on another project in your locality.
Yeah, and I actually think that is incumbent on me as chair of the committee of the authority, to make that clear, only because I've both heard that and seen that from so many people who reside in Prince William County, where by the way, I worked in Prince William County for 23 years.
Yeah,
So
I can make a statement. I mean, I know in the past you have come down to Prince William County to explain that, and I can certainly speak to that, whenever I speak to the reporters, as we continue this, I will make sure that I insert that so people aren't. I mean, the hard thing is though, too, all of you know this, we can say things 90 times, 90 different ways. There's still people who may not hear us and may not be listening. But we are very well, the Board of County Supervisors, we are very, very well aware that we can't just take that money and put it onto another project or widening or whatever we do with Route 28. And our transportation department, our transportation team, they are excellent and they have done a great job in briefing everyone on this project.
And first of all, I'm going to say that I have heard that question from a member of your board, so let's just say that. But I'm actually sometimes I think as chair of this very august body, I'm speaking to residents, and of course we can say things over and over again, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't still keep saying them just for clarity's sake. So now we know how that money will be returned. And we say the amount one more time, Ms. Blackman.
It's a total of $95 million.
But the money that had been drawn down.
$7.5 million.
$7.5 million. Okay. For clarity on that. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. McKay. All right, I think that might, again, if you want to serve on the finance committee, all the hands that are popping up in the air are amazing. But
Madam Chair, we so much love the Finance Committee. I thought it might be important to just let folks know that among our actions taken earlier this evening will be to forward the budget to the authority at the next March meeting. So if you didn't think the Finance Committee wasn't important, maybe now you do.
Now you do. There you go. Now you do. I'm going to put any, meeny, miny, mo with a hat, and you just pull somebody's name out, and there you're going to be in the Finance Committee with us next time.
And then one other point of personal comment. I want to thank a huge amount of work done in that committee and by this authority in general. These aren't easy issues, and we've worked through several of them tonight. I will say I didn't get a chance to comment during Tracy Baynard's session that I really think this issue of bike and ped facilities and how we plan them and fund for them does need work. So I'm personally hopeful that the legislation does make it through. If it doesn't, maybe ask staff to see what the authority could do on its own to take a look at those issues. I'm hearing a lot about it's hard to get bike and ped facilities even with the 30% money. Anyway, enough of that. I just want to end where I began, which is the finance committee is just a boatload of fun. So please.
Thank you, Mrs. Vice Chair. We appreciate it. Anything else for the good of the body? If not, thank you all. We are adjourned.